I'm on Ahmed. Welcome to Built to Sell Radio.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tell me a little bit about 𝙁𝙊𝙐𝙇𝙊𝙀. This was music for anxious pets. Am I getting it right?
Correct. Yeah, it literally is. So we were kind of experimenting with like sound therapy and all this stuff for dogs. And it was just, we originally were doing it for humans. And then I think a few people were joking around saying they try on a dog and it actually works. And then we just elaborated on that and went further and further. And then over the years, it just started kind of molding into this, I guess, music therapy for pets. So when they're left home alone to help with anxiety, stress, loneliness, boredom. And it seems to have a massive positive impact on the mental health of pets.
So you've got a bailout for an afternoon at the grocery store or whatever, and your pet gets anxious. You can put on this YouTube channel and have it play in the background, and the dog or the cat will be less anxious. Is that the idea?
Correct. Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating? I'm lucky. Our dog is pretty chill, so we can leave for half a day and he doesn't really move. But I have heard of dogs, and especially as they age, they can get more anxious.
Do you know what? It's different, to be honest. I think even if they're puppies, they're like generally like super, super anxious. I think if they age, they, as they go on, they become more trained anyway. So it's probably the other way around is what we've noticed. But
Younger,
is so individual, so unique that it's sometimes hard to, yeah.
And how did you make money doing this? Like, what's the business model here?
So for us, it was through YouTube and then Spotify and all the music streaming services. And then we created our own subscription service. So that's pretty much it. And then licensing deals and brand partnership deals. So yeah, quite a few revenue streams, but yeah, big ones.
Okay, so YouTube, as I understand it, once you reach a certain threshold of viewership, you get a revenue share of the advertising they insert in your content, correct?
Correct, yeah. YouTube obviously moves the goalpost every so often, but we were a partner for, like 7-8 years or something.
Okay.
So lucky to get in early.
Okay. Subscription services. So if you didn't want to sign up for 𝙁𝙗𝙐𝙇𝙊𝙐 through or get it through YouTube and consume the advertisements, you could go direct and buy a subscription. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
And what did that subscription cost?
It's only $5 a month.
Okay. And of your overall revenue pie when you sold, what proportion would have been from that subscription service, like ballpark? Would it have been like a big chunk or like?
It was quite a small chunk, to be honest, like 10%, I think it was. But that was because we were just at the stage of just growing the subscription side of the business.
Okay.
But, the YouTube side and the Spotify and all that stuff was just constantly growing. So at the same time, we were just doubling down on that.
And how does it work with Spotify? Like, I know YouTube. I know Joe Rogan signed some major deal with Spotify. I didn't really understand the economics of that. So what specifically are the economics of Spotify, and how are they different from YouTube?
Joe Rogan is obviously a special case. That's kind of more like a record label type of deal. Whereas with Spotify, if you're just distributing on, so you'll use a distribution service like TuneCore or any of those, and then they will just put it onto every music streaming store, from Spotify to Apple Music to Tidal to some of them that are only music streaming services in England or even Japan or wherever. So you get distributed to maybe 120 different music streaming services, and then you just get paid per stream. So Spotify, I think, pays like 0.003 or something like that per stream. As maybe it's changed. And then every streaming service has its own rate. And then you just get paid a royalty per stream.
Cool. Okay, so you don't have to worry about where it's being distributed, whether it's Spotify or Tumblr or whatever. Tumblr, Spotify. It doesn't matter. You get paid based on the syndication company that basically syndicates it for you.
Correct, yeah.
Isn't that interesting? And then what about partnerships? So I'm assuming like dog retailers and dog food, like who are the partners that you guys had?
So we've done brand deals with like dog CBD companies, and then like dog food and organic dog food, and um, dog cameras, and yeah, just loads of like random brands that have approached us for brand deals. So, and it's one of those things we wish we did more of those. It's just we were such a lean operation and the team was maxed out. And it was one of those things that I was in the process of hiring more people to expand that business, because all these brand deals were inbound. They were just approaching us. Yeah.
I'm fascinated by the team, because I'm fascinated by so much about this business. But one question that comes to mind is like, once you build the content, is it necessary to continue to create? Like, do dogs really care if the music changes?
So the funny thing is, yeah, we constantly create new content. Every week there's new music coming out. So our music producer, Ricardo, is in El Salvador. He's constantly in the studio just producing content, and we're experimenting. So literally, before this, we were just looking at a new concept of doing bossa nova, but for dogs. So experimenting with bossa nova. So that's the new type of content that's going to come out soon. And we were just literally chatting to Ricardo now, like, okay, embed the frequencies here and here for dog hearing to make it easier. And so it's just constantly experimenting, and that's just the music side. But we also create visuals as well. So we make TV for dogs, TV for cats. So I'll be chatting to my film producer in Indonesia about, okay, let's experiment with these type of visuals and this type of scenery. And actually, producer.
How do you measure the efficacy of this? Like, how do you actually, like, is there any science behind it, or are you just watching dogs and see how they react to it?
So I'd say, like, science is basically the core of science is data, isn't it, really? So all we're doing is just collecting data and then thinking, like, what's working, what's not working, and then iterating from there. And
but how are you collecting the data? Like,
just through all the endpoints. So watch time and quantitative and qualitative. We'll do research with our fan base and everything. So we take all these data points, like, okay, what's going on here? What's not going on here? Et cetera, et cetera. My whole team is kind of based on interacting with our fan base.
Okay, got it. And how did you convince him? Because, I mean, the skeptic in me is saying, okay, like, I could just put on a Coldplay album and the dog would probably just chill out to Coldplay. So how, like, I'm sure you had to sell against that attitude, right? Of like, yeah, you could just put on some music in the background or just flip CNN on and the dog will be fine. They'll be distracted or whatever. So, like, how did you sell against that skepticism? Like, what was the... How did you, I mean, I'm assuming you had a way to overcome that skepticism.
The funny thing is, not really, because as a pet owner, if there's something specialized for your dog, you're just going to try it, and you just have to go on YouTube and try it. It's not costing you anything, or go on Spotify. It's not costing you anything. So luckily, we didn't have to overcome any of that stuff. And we were very lucky because we just grew through word of mouth as well.
And as you grew, like, at what point did competitors start to kind of get wind of what you were doing and start to try to rip off the idea?
The good thing is, right, and obviously we do have competitors here and there, but we compete against ourselves. So I learned from my first channel on YouTube, which was Relaxation Music for Humans, when all my videos were number one. I was like, I'm the king now. No one can stop me, which is the dumbest thing ever. Because one thing I realized is that you have to work super hard to get to number one, and you have to work twice as hard to stay number one. And what I did this time around, I thought, okay, before anyone else starts creeping up the search engine optimization, the rankings, all that stuff, I replicated my brand. So if you go on YouTube, you might search for dog music and you'll see like maybe a few YouTube channels that are doing it, but all of them are mostly owned by me. Because I thought, let me interconnect and create a wall around my niche as much as possible to be like, I own this space. And yeah, we've had people compete against us. Like, I think Spotify released in 2020 a pet playlist. And that luckily, for us, that flopped. Even the articles, like I think Mashable wrote an article saying that forget about Spotify, try Relax My Dog. It's a lot better. So, I was like, wow, that's amazing. And the other thing is actually people started searching in pet playlists because I was like, where's all this traffic coming from? But because we were ranking everywhere on all the keywords, we started getting the traffic that Spotify probably paid like multiple millions of pounds or dollars for the press. So they actually diverting the traffic to us. So very lucky in that way. But yeah, that doesn't mean be complacent. I'm sure we'll have competitors, and we have, competitors creeping up all the time. We just need to figure out how to be one step ahead.
So who's the we? So you mentioned Ricardo was a co-founder and producer of the music. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Ricardo. And then the rest is just my team in England, who are here with me right now in LA as well. So they just, kind of, there's maybe like 10 of us. We just keep an eye on everything. And it's all about, the fan base, the data, the comments, all that stuff as much as possible. So I think that's something that we keep an eye on.
And the comments would be coming through YouTube and the various subscription sites like Spotify, for example.
Correct. Yeah. Just all our other social platforms like TikTok and all that stuff. Yeah.
Interesting. And so, are those full-time employees, or are they contractors, or how have you structured your team that way?
There's a few of them that are full-time and the others are like contractors.
Right. And so this business, it sounds, as we discuss it, relatively early stage and small, but it got to be pretty big. Like, walk me through, like, to the extent that you were able to share, sort of how big did you get this business before you wanted to sell? Like, in terms of, are you able to share revenue or some proxy for size?
Yeah, so we got into, I can say, 7 figures in profit. So yeah, never mind 7 figures in revenue. We hit 7 figures in profit, which is the most important metric. I think I've realized revenue is a vanity metric. That's it. So I talk in profit always, never revenue. And so yeah, to get 7 figures profit is a really good place to be in, like good 7 figures in that. So that was that. So that's what I can say. And then, yeah, we had like millions and millions of pets around the world, like using our content. So I think, we had about, maybe 30, 40 million pets streaming our content, either on YouTube or Spotify or wherever. And because our content is long form, they were consuming about 15 million hours every 28 days. So that's 15 million every 28 days. And to translate that is about 1,700 years of content is consumed every 28 days on
That's
our
insane.
channels. Yeah, it's mad. Absolutely mad.
Wow, that's just amazing. And so really, it sounds like the secret sauce to your business was mastering the various search engines, being able to rank for things like pet music or calm down my dog or anxious dog music or something like that. Those search terms. It sounds like that was a fairly significant part of the secret sauce of this business.
I say that, but the real secret sauce is the brand. I think the brand and the interaction with owners, like, even though it wasn't a scalable approach, and we still do this, is we interact with all our users as much as possible, like replying to comments and asking open questions, not just being like, oh, thanks, but like, oh, thanks, how did it work? Or what's your dog's name? Or how old is your dog? Or, how did you find us? Et cetera, et cetera. So it's actually not scalable, but I think, it's this now with AI and all this stuff as well. It's actually easier to have a lot of preempted conversations and stuff anyway. So it makes life easier. But 100%, I think the secret sauce is actually giving a shit about your users, like genuinely caring and having conversations which, most brands don't.
How many people on your staff do you have dedicated to answering comments?
Like 7 of them, and it's 80% of their time.
Wow.
Yeah.
7 people doing virtually nothing but answering comments.
Correct. Yeah.
And what sort of coaching do you give them to answer comments? Because when you've got 7 people, you can't approve every comment personally. I'm assuming you've got to really empower them with a set of guidelines, presumably on here's what I want you to do. Here's how have you trained them to answer
That's the funny
comments?
thing. The funny thing is, I told them to be the complete opposite, to maybe even be a bit trolly. And, cause that's the thing, like the whole thing was like, I said to them, just free reign, do whatever you want to do. If you don't have sarcastic replies or be a bit of a troll or whatever it is, that's fine. Just do it because you want personality to the brand. There's no professionalism or whatsoever. Just be a human. That's and then they have free reign.
What do you mean by trolly?
Like trolling as in maybe being a bit, I'd say on edge in terms of creating triggering conversations that will then create a chain of triggering conversations.
Like, give me an example.
But in a fun way. I literally, we see so many, I don't know what. I actually can't think of anything right now. But my team have done a lot. But then it's just one of those things where we just start collecting what's useful data and then be like, okay, this is interesting. And then kind of go from there.
Let me push back a little bit on giving free reign because I think some people are hearing that and saying, oh my gosh, Amman, you can't be serious. Like, if I were to give total free reign without any guidelines to my employees, there's all kinds of nonsense they would put online, and that's going to reflect poorly on my brand. And anyone who's built a brand, Nike, Peloton, Apple, are so careful about what representatives of that brand say about that. Mm-hmm. I mean, you must have given them some sandbox to play in, some set of rules, guidelines, like to not step over a certain line. Was there nothing that you gave them to sort of not
I'd say so. The key thing was obviously collect important data, but have a bit of banter, should we say? Probably the best word. But it works. Look at Ryanair, which is a UK, European-based airline. Whenever something happens in the news, they troll so hard, and everyone praises them. Or it just creates such a huge conversation on Twitter. If you look at Ryanair's Twitter account, some of the stuff they say is so funny and so tongue in cheek, but they end up getting loads of and they get kind of rewarded for it now. A lot of people that is the best marketing tactic. Because that's the thing. Every brand is trying to be professional. Why don't you be the complete opposite and see what happens? Obviously, as long as you don't offend anyone, be swear at anyone or whatever. But if you have a bit of tongue-in-cheek humor, it can actually go a long way.
Yeah, but I guess some people's humor is another person's offense, right? Like that's a subjective line that can be crossed from time to time. Did you ever?
But that's the thing, right? So if you look at Ryanair's Twitter, they do that sometimes as well. It can be misinterpreted, but it still creates a huge conversation. So much social media engagement, and it's an airline that most people hate. It's like Spirit Airlines in America.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is,
like Southwest or something, but it's like a cheap Southwest, if you can imagine. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, but people already hate that airline anyway. But if anything, it improves their brand because at least they have a sense of humor. Like I might have a delayed flight or something, but at least they have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
It kind of works in their favor, but that's just one example. But obviously for us, it's kind of obviously, like my team are not going to do anything crazy. I oversee some of the things here and there, but other than that, like I see what they're doing and it's working. I guess what I'm trying to say is like being super professional and being so much in the guidelines is you're not being genuine to your users. Like, how can we be as genuine as possible and remove the professional barriers?
Yeah, yeah, got it. And so you empowered them to do that. You have 8 people that are replying to comments. I'm assuming that also includes people that are working social media, that they're replying to comments on TikTok and other platforms. Is that correct or no?
Correct. Yeah. So the whole team, they're doing like all the social, everything, all the platforms. They're doing all that, constantly and just kind of see what's working, what's not working, look for trends, memes here and there and all that stuff. So yeah. Yeah, we use a lot of memes. I guess being with pets as well, it's kind of works, but that helps us.
And do you create those memes yourself or just amplify ones you see?
We create them or we amplify one or the other. Yeah.
Got it. Awesome. So, I mean, 7 figures in profit sounds like an incredible cash cow. What triggered you to want to sell it?
I think it was just, I was approached by a few companies and, it was one of those things where it was a good offer. And I think it was more also on the flip side as, a solo entrepreneur, 100% owner, self-funded, no investors, none of that stuff. Obviously Ricardo is a co-founder, but he's more like a music producer only. But it was one of those things I think, as a business owner, when you don't have co-founders or investors or any of that stuff, it's good because you have more freedom and you can do what you want to do and grow as quickly as possible. But then eventually it gets lonely. And I think that was kind of one of the reasons I thought, okay, because you have so much responsibility on yourself. And I thought, okay, I can continue growing this as a cash cow. But I also, I guess, had a figure in my head that if I was approached to sell the business, then it'd kind of be stupid to say no. So it was just one of those things I thought, okay, this is good. But more importantly, the company that approached me was, I just felt like it would open up more doors as well because think about it, is music and TV for dogs and cats. I could have been bought by, I don't know, what do you have here? The equivalent like PetSmart or, some of those like pet retailers or pet food companies or pet insurance or whatever. And, I ended up getting bought by a major rap hip hop label in Hollywood, which is the complete opposite end of what we do. And I thought, wow, this is insane. But also it felt right. It felt right. I felt like, this they could elevate the brand. So it's a process you go over for like, God, 10 months, I think it is. So you kind of get to know if it's the right decision.
So you mentioned you were approached by multiple companies or just Create Music Group? Create Music Group was the successful acquirer of this hip hop brand. But were there other companies that approached you as well?
Yeah, there was a few other companies in England and I think Asia.
And what kind of companies were they?
In this, I'd say it's like some of them were major record labels. Some of them were media companies, and some of them were like pet related companies, like huge like vet chains and all that stuff. So,
and did you approach them? Did you kind of put the business up for sale, or was it all kind of spontaneous inbound, unsolicited inbound?
It was all unsolicited, like inbound type of stuff. So,
got it. And you mentioned you had a number in your head that if you were able to get it, it would be stupid not to sell. Can you walk me through how you thought about that number? If you're willing to share the number, great. If you're not, that's totally cool. It would just be, I'd be curious to know the way you arrived at your number. Cause everybody's got a number. It's a kind of a euphemism, something we talk a lot about. But when I push people about how they calculated their number, inevitably people have sort of a different way to think about their number. Some people have something they want to go buy, or something that would for them be a recognizable achievement in their minds. Like, how did you come up with your number?
I think everything comes down to like your lifestyle first. Like, what lifestyle do you want? And like I said, I was lucky my business was already making 7 figures profit. So anything that I needed to buy, I already bought anyway. So there wasn't like I needed to go buy anything, and I wasn't really into any crazy stuff. I'm all about experiences and stuff. So I think it's just, I think the number was more like when I work for fun because I want to, not because I have to. And then the number for me was like, is it going to compound? Even if it's sat in the bank and luckily interest rates are quite high now, but even if it's sat in the bank and it's making interest, and that interest is compounding your wealth, then you're kind of on the track to build generational wealth, right? In a very, very lazy way, because it's just in the bank. Now, if you do something with that, then you could like compound like crazy. But that was my baseline, I thought. And that's how I worked on my number. I thought, okay, then even if my wealth is compounding in probably the shittest possible way you can with money, then when it's sat in the bank, then you know that, yeah, you're pretty much chilling, even if you do that. So that's how I came. I thought, okay, there's a number for that, and then just worked on it from there.
But why not? And again, I'm asking this question because I'd imagine some people would be thinking about it in their own minds. Is why not just bank the profit? It sounds like a relatively inexpensive business to run, but you're clearing 7 figures of profit. Some might say, well, why not just take that money, put it in, the stock market or commercial real estate or whatever, and continue to sort of own the business and scrape off that profit. Why not do that as opposed to sell? Maybe take me through your thought process there.
So that's what I was doing already anyway. So I had already banked enough out of all the profits I was taking out anyway. So it just got to a point where I thought if I continued doing that, it would take me a few years, maybe 5-6 years, to get to the number that I can get in the next 10 months in cash. So it's just like, and it was one of those things where I thought it was more, the key decision was 2 things and I'm sure a lot of your listeners probably have co-founders, investors and all that stuff. So probably less of a lonely ride, but I think, like I said, there's benefits of being a solo founder, having profits. You can move quick, you can do whatever you want with that money, etc., etc. But the negative is it can become lonely, and also it can become like there's all the responsibility lies on you. So for me, it was more like, okay, I've got to where I need to get to, and I think as a solo founder as well, you can only kind of get to a certain point. After that, then it was one of those things where I got to a point where I needed to hire an executive team, a CEO, COO, blah, 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 blah. But I thought, do I want to be, okay, I can have the finances to build a 50-person company if I wanted to. But do I want to be managing 50 people? Like, hell no. That's not me. And, so for me, it was just like, just the money on the table is more than enough. Just sit back. But it was every decision was based around my lifestyle, my mental health, my physical health. That's it. I can continue growing because I had private equity approach me and said, we can buy a certain percentage of business, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you know how private equity works. Like, it's kind of like running on a treadmill. All they're going to do is just turn the speed up until you fall off. So or maybe you survive and build $1 billion company and exit. But you've sacrificed so much of your physical and mental health by that time. So what's the point even having that money? So that was kind of my thought process.
It sounds like there was also a calculus around the time value of money, like 5 or 6 times your profit all at once had utility, right? You'd allow it to de-risk, put it into an account that would generate an additional wealth over time. When you say generational wealth, I've heard this term before. I think it's become quite popular, but I'm curious to know for you, what does it mean, generational wealth? Like, what does that mean exactly?
So I think generational wealth is like, obviously, the future, like when I have kids or whatever it is, then yeah, that's pretty much enough for them. When obviously right now I'm single, I need to meet someone first, then have kids. But yeah, there's just kind of one of those things where that's kind of where I want to be in that position that's compounding for my future children when that happens.
Got it. And so was there another business that you were, like what I'm hearing you say is a little like the Peter Thiel description of, either you're a 0 to 1 person or you're a 1 to 10 person, meaning, and I haven't, I hope I'm paraphrasing Thiel's book correctly, but you either like starting things or you like kind of growing them exponentially. Those two things are rarely in the same person. It sounds like you enjoy the startup, the process of getting a business to be successful, but once it's reached a dozen employees, you don't have any desire to have a kingdom of people that you're managing. Am I characterizing that correctly? Like, did you have another business that you wanted to go start?
No, not really. I don't need to start another business. Like, I can retire now if I wanted to. But I'm just, like I said, I'm working for fun. And I think it's interesting you reference these books like Peter Thiel and it's just, it kind of brings you into like a wider thing that you see in the books and social media and all this stuff is everyone is chasing to build a unicorn. But why? Like, even if you exit for say like even $5 million or whatever it is, you can have a good life with that. Even if it was like something like 5, but why is no one glorifying that? And that's obviously a lot more achievable. 5, 10, 15, 20, whatever it is. But everyone's just chasing this $1 billion dream. And I think who is it? I think Gary Vee used to push it quite a lot, didn't he? On like, all these people just interview like billionaires because they said the only definition of success is once you're a unicorn. Which is insane. Or the only definition of success is if you've raised $20 million, $50 million, or you're on your Series Z raising like $250 million in a down round or something. You still get praised for that. So it's like, but no one glorifies that. Oh, I make $1 million a year, 2 million, whatever. That's true success, in my opinion.
Well said. And you won't get an argument from me on that at all. I think that's brilliant. And of course, a lot of what we talk about on this show is that, once you take outside money, the clock is ticking. You've got pressures that are very intense at times to sell or to maximize value. And if you own 100% of a smaller pie, it gives you total control, total decision-making, and of course, all the wealth that gets accumulated when the business eventually does sell. So you won't get an argument from me on that at all. Let's talk a little bit about the actual sale itself. So you had multiple inbounds, some private equity saying we'll buy 60% and roll some. You had brands. Maybe walk me through how Create Music Group, do they use the CMG acronym?
Correct. Yeah. CMG.
Okay.
Music, yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about how they approached. Like,
it was a company that they acquired, I think Trap Nation, and it was like a random email in my inbox. I was so close to deleting it as well because it went to my junk. And then luckily I just scanned to the footer and I was like, oh, Trap Nation, that looks familiar. I was so close to pressing delete. And then, then it kind of, a conversation kind of escalated, but also there's like a random LinkedIn connection from another company that Create Music Group owns called Flighthouse. And, it was just, someone had already heard of my YouTube channel there, and there were, it was just a conversation about a partnership. I didn't realize both random connections were owned by the same entity. So then the conversation just went straight to the top very quickly.
And where does it go from there? So the conversations, when you say went straight to the top, they went straight to the top of the Create Music Group?
Correct. Yeah. The CEO. Yeah.
Okay. And how did they, sometimes these conversations are shrouded in sort of kind of obtuse language or oblique language, like, let's have a partnership. But did they cut right to the chase and say, we'd like to buy you? Or was it more this kind of partnership? Let's learn what each other are doing, how we can help each other.
I think it was just a straight up, like, do you want to sell? That was it. So
and how did you react?
Well, it was I thought, let me entertain the idea. Because I kind of was open to it anyway. But I thought, let me entertain the idea and see where this conversation leads.
Where does it go from there?
From there, it kind of, start getting serious. There's more meetings, all that stuff. And then, a bit of back and forth. And then you get a LOI, and letter of intent. And
had you shared before the LOI? Well, first of all, what was your reaction to the LOI?
The LOI is just kind of like a formal letter, really. So it's just, okay, this is formal. Yeah.
Had they shared with you their thoughts on valuation before preparing the LOI? Like, had you guys agreed verbally on what the numbers would be?
We kind of, had agreed, but then, after that, I got an M&A guy involved, and then he just managed the process. And so it was a bit of a range, should we say, just to get to like the LOI stage, and then kind of just went from there.
When you say there was a bit of a range, what do you mean? The valuation?
Correct, valuation range, yeah. So it was one of those things where you just agree on a number. First then you get an investment banker involved, and then they obviously go into the details from there.
Got it. So how did they think about valuation? Was this a multiple of your profit they were offering to pay, or multiple of your revenue, or how did they think about it?
Yes, it's generally done on like EBITDA multiples. So it was a EBITDA. Generally, it can be done on EBITDA multiples, branding, users, all that stuff, etc. So those are generally the main multiples.
Got it. So it sounds like they came to you and said, we'd be willing to pay between X and Y, or kind of a range of multiples. Then the LOI, I'm assuming, hardened that up. So it went from not having a range to actually having a definitive number. Am I getting
No, sorry. The LOI still had the range. The LOI is just
it did.
Like because it's a formal letter. And then from there, you just, you can't agree on anything until the accounts, the numbers, all that stuff are officially cleaned up, and then you have a clear picture, and then you have all the data. But this is not something that you do. This is what your investment banker does. So they clean everything up. I'm like, okay, this, because, it's called adjusted. It's one of the things to call adjusted EBITDA. Then, the real EBITDA. So, people that own businesses might put unnecessary expenses into their business that are not business critical. So you need to take all those out because they're not actually, you have to put in business critical only expenses. And then as a result, generally that makes your profits even bigger.
Yeah. Because
that trip to Bali wasn't a business trip, was it? But you said it was a business trip. Exactly. Yeah. So that's one example. But so things like that. Are quite interesting. But this is what investment bankers generally get involved in.
Yeah. So that's referred to as the adjustments process, or coming up with an adjusted EBITDA number. So you did that. And is all this, usually in an LOI, at least the letters of intent I've seen, there is a no shop clause, which means you effectively sign an agreement not to negotiate with anybody else until you consummate a deal. Did your LOI have a no shop clause associated with it?
Correct. Yeah, it's called an exclusivity period.
Got it.
That's correct.
So you had that, and so you signed an LOI that had a range. You gave up, negotiating leverage, and you went through the diligence process, adjusted EBITDA, and so forth, and came to a final share purchase.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah, I'd say like it was negotiation and diligence at the same time. So that's pretty much because you have to do the diligence to clean up the data to then negotiate the correct number. So that's pretty much what the investment banker did. But it was one of those things. I think anyone selling their business always get an investment banker or M&A or whatever it is, because you cannot do this. So I was at one point thinking I can do this myself. I just need a lawyer. But then my lawyer was like, trust me, just get an investment banker. It's gonna get real complicated. And I was like, no,
for folks who maybe
yeah, because I was like, no, it's fine, I can do this myself. So
yeah. And if folks are a bit skeptical of that, saying, oh, it's a lot of money for an M&A professional, like what specifically could you point to that would illustrate how beneficial it is to have an M&A professional at your side? Like, could you share a story or an example?
I can share feelings, shall I say, in the sense that I remember being in calls and be like, I have no idea what these guys are even talking about. So, because this is way above my knowledge and way above my capacity. And it was just kind of like, it hit me as like, there is no way I could have done this myself. This has gone way beyond my knowledge. I don't know what it means. So it was weird. I was like, I didn't even talk about my own business. I don't know if they're even talking about my business because it was just so like to another level. So you need an investment banker because they're so detailed on numbers and accountings and all. And they actually cleaned up some of the mistakes my accountant made, which I wasn't aware of. So yeah, you need one. But I think obviously there's a lot of sharks out there. I got very lucky with mine, but I interviewed a lot of sharks. And I think mine specifically did M&A in the music industry. And he was a one-man band. So he was like so all in. There was no office hours. I could call him at midnight and be like, look, what's going on? This, etc. So I think, finding a good M&A person is hard, but you need one. 100%.
Yeah, well said, for sure. It's a message we've had on this show time and time again, that they pay for themselves many times over in terms of, the money that you end up taking away from a deal generally is greater with than without. So walk me through the most difficult part of the negotiation. Like what parts did you personally find most challenging about the final negotiation?
I said there was a few obstacles where my accountant made some mistakes with taxes and all this stuff that needs to be corrected, and the UK government was operating quite slow, and that like messed up the timeline a little bit. But then they had some, some things on their side which I can't obviously discuss in detail, but they slowed them down a little bit as well. So there was a lot of things. It was a bit of a roller coaster, should we say? I think with anything, and deadlines get extended, and this gets missed, and this gets missed, or there's certain things that are missing here and there, or sometimes even their lawyers or my lawyers will like fuck up or miss something, or so they're just like, yeah, it was definitely those 10 months are probably the hardest ever worked in my business, and I had my business for 7 years. That was the hardest I ever worked.
I want to push there. And again, the reason I want to push there is because I want our listeners to understand what they're about to go through. Many of them are about to go through this process of selling their company in the next few years.
Yeah.
Part of me is hearing you say, like, I'm so glad I hired an M&A professional. I was way out of my league. They were talking about stuff I didn't realize. So part of people are saying, well, it doesn't doesn't sound like Amman was doing anything. Like it was up to, he totally delegated it to the M&A guy. So why was it so hard during that 10-month period? If he'd hired an M&A person, like, isn't the M&A guy supposed to do all the work at that point? Like, why were those 10 months still so hard for you personally?
Because I was leading it from a business perspective. So I was on top of everyone, like this, just double checking everything as much as possible and just speeding that process up as much as I can. But at the same time, you're running a business. Everyone says this when you're in the process of selling your business, you have your day job and then you have you're working twice. You're basically working twice. And then also on top of that, you have to put your own tax structures in place, personal tax, all your wealth, all that stuff, trust, etc., etc. You need to start putting all that in place way beforehand as well.
How do they structure your sort of after the sale contract? Did you have an earnout or an employment agreement? Maybe talk a little bit about how that was
obviously I'm employed. I don't know if I can go into actual structure, but all I can say is that I got the deal that I wanted for sure. And it gave the deal that I wanted. I'd say it was, it was definitely the deal that I wanted. That's all I can say. But, now I have an employment contract and there's left a bit of earn out and all this stuff, et cetera, et cetera. But I think, the way it was structured was exactly how I wanted it. And I think I walked away with that, like, very happy, for sure.
I understand and appreciate you can't get into too much detail about the actual structure. So maybe I'll ask it a different way. What advice would you give an entrepreneur who is about to go through this negotiation? Maybe they've got an LOI or they've got a couple of interested people having inbound conversations. I'd be curious. So assuming they've got their dream number in their head as to, like you did, what you kind of wanted or felt that would be generational. Where does it, like, what advice would you give someone in that situation?
I would say, firstly, if you do have earnouts and all that stuff, it's a difficult one because then if you have an earnout, you could, let's say for a simple example, it was a $20 million exit and you got $10 million on day one and then all this, like, potentially other 10 million, maybe it'll go higher if you hear targets, et cetera, et cetera. But, you might have that other second 10 million might actually be impossible to achieve. So you really didn't have that $20 million exit. You walked away with 10 because there'll be, the company that buys you might be a large corporate, might be a change management, they move the goalposts, they do all this stuff, etc. Or you might have shares in a company that goes up and then down. And so it was more like, it depends on people's preferences. But I personally would say it would be easier just to do 100% cash exit if you can, because then you're not golden handcuffs, you would say, you're not tied down to anything. So I'd say that is probably an easier option, but it depends. Some people want earnouts. Some people only want to sell 40-50% of their company and just scale to the moon and just have. So I think it's down to your personal preference and the lifestyle that you want post close.
But sounds like, given the independent streak you have, you wanted as much cash up front as you could get and as little kind of tied to an earnout. Yeah, makes sense. And I think in keeping with a lot of our guests. Are you up for a quick lightning round before I let you go?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, cool. What was the slimiest trick one of those inbound inquiries tried to play on you? So you mentioned it before you met with Create Music Group. There were a number of companies that sort of approached you spontaneously or out of the blue. What do they try to play on you? What tricks? How do they try to pull the wool over your eyes?
I don't think. I'd say probably, I wouldn't say a slimy trick, but just some of them were just stupid.
In what way?
In terms of that, they had just no experience in the media space. They were just bunch of rich guys, hedge funds or whatever they were. And it was just like, it was just one of those things where I felt like the smartest person in the room. And the whole reason I wanted to do an acquisition is because I want to be the dumbest person in the room. I want to open up to a whole new network, a whole new education, all that stuff. So, yeah, and I think I wouldn't say it was a slimy trick, but I think one of them probably didn't understand multiples properly in this space and then miscalculated, and it was just a bit embarrassing for them.
Why? What was the multiple? When you say multiples in this space, what are the multiples in this space?
So like a multiple in this space can be anywhere between like 8 to 12 to maybe 15 or whatever it is. It depends. But
times EBITDA.
Yeah, EBITDA. So, but they obviously didn't really understand us properly. So they made an offer, and then that offer was like maybe kind of, they were like, "Oh, sorry, we overcalculated." And I was like, "Well, I'm not going to jump up and down about it, am I?" So, and it also makes you guys look stupid. So that's your problem, not mine. Peace out. That's it.
Got it. What was sounds like your acquirers made some mistakes. What was the biggest mistake you made personally in the process of selling your company? Like, what's the biggest do-over you'd love to be able to change?
The biggest do-over I'd love to change is have my tax structure in place a lot sooner. So I think I'd say anyone just sort all it out. Even if, there was like certain things where, for example, I gifted my dad some shares, and, he's at an age where really those should have been put into a trust a long time ago. So you could have helped with inheritance and all that stuff. So there's a few things that then you have to take insurance out on that. And as a result, it's quite a lot of money when you're taking insurance out on your parents at a certain age. So there's certain things that I wish I kind of did a lot sooner. And I'd say to everyone, just prepare to sell, even if you're not in the process of selling. Look at your accounts, your numbers, everything, as if someone from the outside is doing due diligence on you every single day. And I think if I took that approach, then I would have been in a cleaner place, and maybe this process would have been done a lot quicker.
Can you describe the lowest emotional point you reached during the process of selling?
The lowest emotional point, I'd say more like frustration. Cause like certain things when, lawyers would ask like questions that they already have answers to, and things that they should have asked a lot sooner, and now it's slowing things down. And, there'd be times on the call where I just like lose my shit. Like, I'd be like, I don't give a fuck. This is not even worth the pain. So, and also I don't give a shit. I'm already making money, so whatever. So I'd say there was a lot of like frustration. I wouldn't say lowest emotional point, but, business is one of those things where if you can detach from emotion, that's when you make the best decisions. So there was no like, oh, I'd go home and cry. Like if I had a frustrating day, I'd be like, oh, cool, clock off. I'm going to go play, I play five-side football or soccer, whatever it is with my friends. But then that's my time. Doesn't affect me. I'll go to the gym or whatever. But whatever happens during the work hours is war, but then I can just switch off. And so, Yeah, I'd say there's more frustrating points than like low emotional sleepless nights type of
What about
thing.
highs? What about emotional highs during the process? What can you describe what the high point was?
I think the high point was when I came out to meet Create Music Group, because I was like, wow, these guys, they're all similar ages to me. They've built an incredible empire, and like some of the artists they represent, I'm fans of, and I listen to their music, and just kind of like how well connected they are in the music industry. A few of the artists have like been nominated for Grammys, and they're based here in Hollywood, and it was just a whole new like kind of wow. I grew this business, God, like in Manchester, and I'm from like 𝙁𝙊𝙐𝙇𝙊𝙁, Leeds, which not many people make it out of my area. Um, yeah, like not many people make it out, and I'm like, here I am in Hollywood, about to sell my business to artists that I listen to. I think that was kind of like a mad moment. Even now I'm back out here again with my team, and some of my team, they've grown up in some pretty rough areas in Manchester. They've never ever been out of the country. Maybe they've been to Spain or something. It's the first time all in America for them. So I'm kind of re-experiencing that high with them, because they're just like, whoa, this is crazy. Like they describe Los Angeles as like, GTA, because that's the closest experience you can get to LA, is playing that game GTA 5 or whatever it is. So for them, yeah, it's incredible to see the smile on their faces.
GTA being Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
That's so funny. How did you educate yourself about the M&A process? Were there any books you read, courses you took, mentors you met with? Point people to some resources if they're about to go through this process.
So in terms of the M&A process, like literally, it was pretty much make it up as you go along. I had to educate myself very quickly, in the sense that what I did was like, so there's three keys to M&A. Obviously, you're a lawyer, your M&A guy, investment banker, and you're a tax person. And I had to educate myself on all three pillars as quickly as possible. And I was literally just asking questions, speaking to as many lawyers as possible, many other M&A people, just, kind of interviewing them, just asking these open questions to just collect as much data as I can. But there was no bugs, none of this stuff. That's the thing about this M&A world. The actual details, because of NDA and all that stuff, is very hard to get that unless you have one-on-one conversations with people. So I thought, right, who sold the business? How do I seek them out? How do I meet them for a coffee? And just find out details that they can have openly in a conversation where it's not recorded. And then they'll be like, okay, do this is how it is. And then you can, then you can talk more confidential information. But I'd say seek out as many people as possible that have sold a business, and probably meet them for a coffee so it's not recorded in any way. And then just get as much info as you can. Yeah.
So you sold Relax My Dog, Relax My Cats, both of which collectively were doing more than 7 figures in terms of profit. What did you buy yourself as a trophy to commemorate this incredible achievement? Tell me you bought yourself something that reminds you of the win.
No, do you know what's so funny, actually? I've not even had a holiday. And the acquisition happen like 2 months ago. First, it doesn't even feel real to me right now. That this has just happened. I'm still even though I'm an employee, still kind of treating it as if like, oh, this is my own business. It's so interesting. I think, even my car, I never upgraded it. I was never into cars, and I had a dent in the side of the car. And my dad was like, this car is fucking embarrassing. You just sold your business for life-changing amount of money. Why are you driving this piece of shit around? I was like, I don't care. Just get me from A to B. So he was like, okay, I'll just find you a car. And then I think he got me like a slightly upgraded, like tiny, like hatchback Peugeot. I think it is a Peugeot car. I don't know if you have them here, like in America, but even that, it's so funny because my friend was like, oh, out of everyone, like you become like a multi-millionaire and you buy yourself a Peugeot. Who does that? Like, could have bought yourself a Lamborghini, a Ferrari, or something like that, and you go and buy a Peugeot. It's like, and they're just laughing at me. But it was just one of those things where I thought, wow, it's insane. But I'm not into like. I've not bought myself anything because I don't need to. Like for me, it's about life experiences. Maybe I'll go on a few holidays and stuff, but I think I was just never into anything crazy. Like I've heard loads of people that have sold businesses have done this and done this and done that. Oh, gone, spend like 30, 40 grand in Bali or something like that. But nah. But at the same time,
you're happy with the Peugeot.
Yeah, literally, that's it.
There
but
you go.
It's more the fact that like maybe it's still kind of new to me as well. I've not mentally processed what just happened. So,
well, I think it's very sage to sit on the cash, let it grow, and maybe one day down the road you'll buy yourself something to commemorate the win beyond the Peugeot, which is great. Ahmed, if people want to reach out to you on social, sounds like you're pretty active. What's the best way for folks to find you on social? Are you a LinkedIn guy or Twitter? What's your preference?
Anything, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. I think my Instagram is open as well. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we'll put all those in your show notes page at built2sell.com. Anything else you wanted to say before we wrap?
I'd say to anyone that's looking to sell your business, don't get greedy. Have your exit number and sell. Don't be like, oh, I can grow for more and sell for more in 2 years or whatever. I guarantee you, greed will make you poor and crush you, and you'll be selling a distressed asset. So, yeah, I'd say
words to live by Ahmed. Thank you so much for sharing your story, and we'll look all of the details for my listeners at built2sell.com. Just look for Amon's show notes. Thanks, Amon.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.